We are having fun.
It's fantastic.
It's a busy, buzzing conference.
The freedom of influence without the responsibility of actually governing. Ed Davey spent an election daredeviling across the nation. He spent the start of his party conference on the beach. The ambition of the Liberal Democrats and their now 72 MPs.
We're here to hold the new government to account. Obviously, we won our seats off the back of the most appalling Conservative government.
Going to be holding the government to account?
Well, we are the ones who've got momentum behind us.
Today's announcements: policies for increased free school meals and a national body for special educational needs and disabilities. But there is one phrase that gets repeated again and again here in Brighton.
Social care.
Social care.
Social care.
The policies that we campaigned on in the general election is what delivered us 72 MPs and a historic election result.
But those policies are very different to what people would normally think of Lib Dems. No tuition fees, not very much on Europe, not very much on electoral reform. You're the party of social care now.
Well, we are the party of social care because no other party is talking about it, but we are also the party of Europe.
We obviously recognise that we have campaigned on very specific issues, particularly around health and social care.
Is that the number one? Are you going to grip onto that and make it your issue?
I think really that will be our number one issue as Liberal Democrats.
Are you a party reinvented?
We are absolutely not a party reinvented, but a party on a new mission with new energy.
This wasn't just a good election for the Liberal Democrats. They took a record number of seats. The question now, how do they build from here?
Did people actually vote for you, or did they just not vote for the Tories who they're sick of and Labour who they didn't like in their local area?
That's the strangest question because they put their cross beside Liberal Democrats, so they voted Liberal Democrats.
They may have lent you their votes. Are they long-term Lib Dems?
People see, once they have a Liberal Democrat MP who works for the community, who works for on local issues and for local causes, they vote for them again.
It's got to complete the job in the blue wall, and I think opportunities are going to open up as Labour disillusions people. It already is after a few weeks.
Is 72 MPs the height, or have you got more space to go?
I think there's a lot more space to go.
Short term, they say they want to shape Labour policy and eventually, they hope, replace the Tories as the official opposition. After a near decade of the wilderness, the Lib Dems are now basking in the sunshine of relevance.
Well, joining me now here on a noisy Brighton seafront is the Liberal Democrats' Deputy Leader, Daisy Cooper. Daisy, ask you about our top story first, about migration. Labour apparently considering processing asylum claimants offshore, as Italy are doing. Is that something you'd support?
Well, we Liberal Democrats have said for a very long time that not only do we have to increase security, what we really need to do is reopen those safe and legal routes which the Conservatives closed down. And only by reopening those safe and legal routes, which includes processing people before they even apply to come here, so they can do so without crossing the Channel, that would be a really good step forward.
Of course, there's been another step forward, that's something you've always opposed, which is digital ID cards, something recommended by the former Prime Minister Tony Blair. Labour's sort of resisting it. Is that something you'd consider?
I don't think we need to have digital ID cards. What we need is an asylum system that actually works. We know the Conservatives brought the asylum system to its knees with an enormous backlog and lots of vulnerable people left in a situation where they can't claim asylum here and they can't be moved abroad either. What we really need is the reopening of these safe and legal routes so people who can claim asylum can do so without having to make that terrible journey across the Channel.
Of course, a lot of that depends on better relations with the European Union, which is something that Keir Starmer's tried to sort of reboot. There is a point of difference there between you and Labour, isn't there? Because you've committed in your manifesto to rejoining the EU single market and eventually rejoining the EU itself. But it's something you've been so sort of muted on as a party, isn't it? Do you now, with your record 72 MPs, have the confidence to shout more loudly about the benefits of the UK rejoining the EU?
Well, we have been very clear for months and for years that we think Brexit has been a disaster. It's wrapped up our small businesses in red tape. Farmers have been undercut by these disastrous trade deals from abroad. And so, of course, we want to rebuild our relationship with Europe. I do think that the government is giving out the right mood music. It's really hard to overestimate the damage that the Conservatives did to our relationship with the EU. So I welcome the mood music, but we Liberal Democrats are going to hold Labour's feet to the fire. And we want to start by asking them to really consider a youth mobility scheme, because that's one of the very first things the government could do straight away, which has set us on that path to rebuilding that relationship with Europe.
Holding Labour's feet to the fire, you say. Does that include on the future of the NHS, where they're saying, Keir Starmer's saying, no more cash without without reform. You want cash now. So does that mean if you don't get cash for the NHS in the budget, you'll vote against the budget?
Well, we will see what Labour brings forward in the budget, and we look forward to seeing those details. But we have been clear, we want to see reform and investment. And we think that during a cost of living crisis, it's the wrong thing to do to ask ordinary folk to pay higher taxes. But we do think that the big banks, the big oil and gas companies, the big tech companies, they could be paying a little bit more to help our NHS and care services get back on their feet.
So higher taxes for better public services, that's the new Lib Dem message, is it?
Liberal Democrats said throughout the general election that we will not tax struggling families during a cost of living crisis, but we will look to reverse the tax cuts the Conservatives gave to the big banks. We will look to increasing the digital tax on the big tech giants. We will look
Capital
to windfall
gains tax.
We would look to close a loophole in the capital gains tax, which would mean that the richest 1% people in the country would pay a little bit more to get our health and care back on their feet.
But just to push you on the budget, if you don't get more money for the NHS in the budget, you'd vote against it, would you?
We're not committing at this stage to any kind of voting decision until we see the details of what the Labour government will bring forward. But we are very clear here at our conference what we want to see. We want to see a budget for the NHS and social care. We want to see a budget that will save our NHS and social care, and that requires reform and investment.
And just briefly, you know, your leader sort of entertained people during the election campaign, bungee jumping and jet skiing and so on. Do you think Keir Starmer, with his very downbeat message, is talking the country down?
But I think it's entirely up to the Prime Minister to decide how he wants to run his new government. But
you don't want to see him bungee jumping?
He can decide whether he wants to do the bungee jump or not. Certainly I'm not going to do one, I can tell you that. What I would say is I think many people voted for the Liberal Democrats. We got our best result ever because we showed that we're very serious about our politics, but we don't take ourselves too seriously.
Daisy Cooper, thank you very much for joining us.